companies for not doing the things that they want them to do.
All those rules, all those regulations cost businesses quite a bit of money. It costs us consumer because they just pass it on to us. We're going to leave it there. Katie Pavlich, thank you.
Yep. Thanks.
All right. After the ruling, we're still paying, despite a court deciding the president's labor board recess appointments are unconstitutional. Taxpayers are still funding their salaries. Republican Senator Roy Blunt calling for those checks to stop. But Democratic strategist Mark Hanna says the senator should let the courts decide. Sir, look, they were ruled unconstitutional appointments. They have to leave, do they not? You're going to talk to America and tell them we need to still pay these bozo salaries?
Yeah, no, I think what the final arbiter of what is constitutional and unconstitutional, as you know, is the United States Supreme Court, which is where this case is headed on appeal.
You have to go to the Supreme Court to believe it. Is that what so everything should end up in the Supreme Court?
I'm saying that they've already come out and said that they're going to appeal this to the Supreme Court. I think if you want the judicial process to have integrity, I would suggest that Senator Blunt, Senator Alexander would assert a little bit of patience and not try to necessarily make political hay about...
So Mark, let me get this straight. A federal court isn't good enough for you?
I think that the process is still going on. As I mentioned, it's going on appeals. But let's take a minute, Eric, and look at the decision itself. This is overturning 150 years of judicial precedent where Republican presidents, Democratic presidents have all made these types of appointments. Now,
hold on, Mark. Let's not be disingenuous.
Sure.
Let's talk about what happened.
I'm not being.
President Obama used a little trick. He appointed these people while the Senate was still... It was not on recess. They were still gavelled in. The Senate had not gone on recess, but yet he appointed these guys.
The Senate was on break. It advertised that it was going on break. Now, what the court did is found it a technicality to say, hey, look, we're not on recess technically. But as you know, Eric, we've been at war for the past 10 years. The Senate hasn't declared war as it's constitutionally obligated to do. That doesn't change the reality of the fact that we're at war. It doesn't. A Senate recess is a Senate recess, whether or not the Senate actually calls it that.
President Obama,
very vocal.
The federal court found that this was unconstitutional. We're still paying these guys salaries. I shouldn't have called them bozos. It's not their fault. It's President Obama's fault for doing it while the Senate was still in session, technically in session. Let me ask you something, Mark. If you buy a car from someone who you knowingly willingly buy, pay him money for a car that you know is stolen, and the police find out, do you think you should get your money back when the police take the car back?
I think you're making an analogy between a stolen car and public servants who are appointed to the National Labor Relations Board.
A law was broken, right? A law was broken, and now these guys think they should still be paid. Look, it's not,
Eric. This is a law that's
been
broken. It's been broken for the past 150 years by Republican presidents and Democratic presidents. This is judicial activism. You've come out against judicial activism on the left. This is an example of judicial activism on the right.
No, I don't think so. I think this is the Senate Republicans gavelled in, which kept the Senate in session, and President Obama decided to ignore the fact that the Senate was in session and put 3 people in place.
You're making the kind of interpretation that the Senate Republicans made that the court is making right now.
Is there another one?
It's an interpretation, and it's based on a technicality here. I think I think the wisdom of the Supreme Court will be what we all defer to ultimately. So let's just get the bee out of our bonnet and the Senator Alexander's bonnet and just stop trying to be opportunist about this and let the courts decide. Let it go to the Supreme Court, which is a logical next step. I trust that they will be expeditious in ruling on this.
See, the reason why it matters, Mark, is that the next time President Obama wants to appoint someone in recess, he does it through the proper channels.
No, this is what he's done for the past 5 years. This is what President Bush did for 8 years before him. You can say that, and those on the right will say that, but let's think about the political motivations that brought this suit. Why wasn't this suit brought when President Bush was, for example, nominating for a judge Janice Brown, who's a member of the DC Court of Appeals that ruled on this, who was filibustered and finally reappointed and got through the filibuster process?
I don't know.
Why are we picking on...
I don't know. I don't know, but we got to leave it there. Mark Hanna, we're going to say thank you very much, sir.
Good to see you, Eric.
You too. All right, we're pumping out graduates, but not the jobs. Our government subsidies feeding a bubble about to burst?